Look on your social media feeds. It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's Krypton's Legacy, a Superman podcast, covering all of Clark Kent's greatest adventures in comics, film, and animation, with your hosts, Adam and Nick.
Welcome to another episode of Krypton's Legacy, a Superman podcast and vidcast. As always, I'm your host, Adam, and with me is my co-host, Nick. Nick, how's it going?
I have to say that I am doing super, because we have a super episode to talk about, and it is Thanksgiving here in the States, so I will make a little formal statement at the end. But Adam, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. We have a jam-packed show indeed. And we kind of, it wasn't hard to predict, but so I wouldn't ask me for any lottery advice if our audience is wanting to do that. But you and I, on our last episode, kind of understanding that the actor's strike was soon to be eminently over at the time. Well, now it's over, and we had predicted that, by the time our next episode rolls around, we're going to have some Superman Legacy news, probably casting news. And sure enough, James Gunn delivered. We also have some Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow related news, which we'll talk about. And then following those news discussions, Nick and I are going to start our rewatch of Superman the Animated Series with episode 1, which was Last Son of Krypton Part 1. And then after the break, we're going to review one of the, I think, classics in terms of Superman comic book storytelling, Superman for All Seasons by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. It only made sense to do that one as our first comic book review together, because we had just done Long Halloween on the Batman side, which was by Loeb and Sale. So it made sense to continue the Loeb and Sale kind of track. But also, James Gunn has stated that For All Seasons has an influence on the Superman Legacy, so we're going to make our way through some of the books that James Gunn has pointed out that have a reference on Legacy. So that's our show for today. So let's get right to it. Let's start with the Supergirl news, because I think chivalry is important and ladies first. So here we go. And that's for all my multiverse wives as well on the list. I'll get to that in a bit. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. We knew that it was on the slate back in January of 2003 when it was announced it would be Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. We didn't know when things could potentially start happening, because the only thing with the release date was Superman Legacy and the Batman Part 2. So we knew it was a thing, we knew it was happening, but we didn't know when it was happening or when we'd start hearing things about it. Well, James Gunn decided, after the strike's over, we're going to hear stuff about it, because via all the major trades, James Gunn has formally announced and welcomed, let me get the name right, Anna Nogueira as the writer of Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. It's interesting, this writer, because I think this will be, as far as I know, her first film credit, like film writing credit. She's an actress turned playwright turned screenwriter. So, to be a playwright, that takes talent. Plus, being an actress, I'd imagine that seeing all the scripts that she's probably read, you pick up things as you know as you read them, and so you get an idea, a feel for it. So her inexperience in terms of the feature film side doesn't worry me at all, because like I said, being a playwright, it's not like she hasn't put pen to paper, or in this case, computer typing to paper, or whatever, however you want to phrase the saying that is no longer valid thanks to technology. But so I'm not concerned. Plus, I trust James Gunn.
Mm-hmm.
James Gunn picked her, so who am I to take issue with the fact that, to my knowledge, she hasn't written a feature film before? And the way James Gunn quoted, it seems like the script, or a draft of the script, is completed. So, and he had nothing but high praise for it, saying something to the effect of Anna's adaptation exceeded my expectations. So, Nick, my question now is to you. What are your thoughts on the hire? And are you surprised that it seems like Woman of Tomorrow is further along than anybody thought?
Yeah, I quite like this hire, actually, to be honest. I'll tee up that second question that you asked, because I have an ongoing theory that I want to set up a little bit here. But it's actually fascinating, just to add a few more threads to what you just said, because all of it is 100% factually true, is that she was actually the writer that was writing the initial version of the Supergirl movie that was going to initially follow up the Flash movie, which was going to star Sasha Calle. So to me, it sounds like either two different scenarios might be happening. Either there was an interchangeable Supergirl character where it could be Sasha Calle or not, and the story, or the script, I should say, is that good that James Gunn loves it, or it's a reworked version with Sasha Calle intended to play the character, and we'll see if it pans out or not. But yeah, no, I'm just as shocked as you are, to be honest, that we're actually hearing about this movie now. Because while I intended that they weren't going to wait too long for this movie to come out, I wasn't maybe like anticipating it like now. Like, it feels like they're actually fast tracking it, to be quite honest with you. And why I think that is with all the characters that we're hearing about in Superman Legacy. I have this theory that Supergirl is going to actually be in Superman Legacy, and they're using Superman Legacy to tease, or I would say probably just to tease her, introduce, or tease whichever it's going to be, her solo movie. So I feel like that's why we're fast tracking it. There's a rumored director, which I'm not going to name because it's not really credible at the moment. I want to wait till we get a little more factual evidence.
Yeah, I saw that, the supposed shortlist. Yeah,
the supposed showrunner
that we only got one name from. Okay, yeah.
Right. So kind of take that with a massive grain of salt.
Yeah.
But in other words, I'm excited for this. I think that the movie could be a really, really cool DC movie, a space operatic adventure filled with hope. It's like Star Wars mixed with a little DC. I mean, you got coming of age elements that you can throw in there too. So I think it's a really cool idea, and I like that it seems like it's going to follow up Superman Legacy really, really well.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, we say that we're shocked to hear that there may even be a draft finished.
Yeah, I think it's done.
Yeah, at least again from this quote. I mean, you can't love somebody's adaptation of something if the adaptation isn't finished, right? You had to have read something to love something. You can't just hey, I hypothetically love that, and I'm just going to say that's the case. But we had assumed that the order in which James Gunn announced things was the guaranteed order that they were going to come out. There's nothing to say that that's guaranteed, though, right? However, we are getting, according to James Gunn's strategy, 2 movies and 2 series a year. So it's very conceivable that the 2 movies for 2026 are the Authority and Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've got the Batman Part 2 and Superman Legacy in 25. So that makes total sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I reflect on it and think about it, but again, I think this is fascinating, and it wouldn't shock me if there's an introduction of Supergirl. Probably, if I had to just guess, because we have nothing to go on, probably something at the end.
Yeah, because I mean, like, why else do you really fast track? Like, doesn't it feel like they are fast tracking this a little bit?
It seems, but again, it seems like it. Now, to be granted, we didn't know the release order because it was never stated. Right. This is guaranteed the order that things are going to come out. Like, Gunn didn't say, this is. We don't have a date, but I guarantee you that this is how it's going to roll. He never said that, but it does, like, just the fact that it's done. Or it seems to be the script is done. And that's the other thing, too. Like, we're all guilty of this. We all want to hear the news, right? We all want to have a tweet put out and a fancy official statement in the trades. But just because we don't hear those or see those every day, it doesn't mean stuff's not happening behind the scenes. Like, every project on the Chapter 1 slate probably has writers attached. Some that are getting ready to go before the cameras probably have actors attached that we don't necessarily know are up for the roles. So, again, you have to factor that in as well. Like, again, we haven't heard details about a lot of stuff. Doesn't mean I can guarantee you now stuff's happening behind the scenes. We just they're just not going to dump it all. Hey, they're not going to dump. Well, today James Gunn had coffee with John Logan about Brave and the Bold. They're not going to tell us that, because unless it breeds something official, why do they have to tell us that? So that's the other thing we got to take into account, that just because we up until now hadn't heard anything didn't mean that behind the scenes, as soon as the writer's strike was over, Anna was typing away at the script, which seems like was the case. Or something was handed in beforehand, before the strike. But yeah, again, it's cool to see moving forward. I love the book, so I'm eager to see this. I mean, you could be right about there could be two scenarios where it was a start from scratch situation. Like, they liked her work on the original version, but they said start from scratch, and because they liked her so much, they brought her back. Or it could be a case where maybe that was reworked. That script was reworked to, like, not mention Flash continuity. And that could be true of whether it stars Sasha or not, because Sasha's character wasn't going to be wholly the same based on how she was in the Flash, because of the whole reset or whatever the heck Flash does. Like, she was going to be somewhat different anyway. So the rewrite, like, if they use parts of or framework from the existing script that she was working on, that could be reworked either for Sasha or somebody else, regardless. And I know that Sasha is one of your multiverse wives, but I think you and I are both in the same boat, where we'll welcome Sasha back into the fold wholeheartedly if that's what they choose to do. But if they choose to go ahead and recast the part, we'll be on board with that as well, simply because the characters are more important than the actors who play them. That is the mantra of this show, all the shows on my network. Just like, Richard Donner had verisimilitude in his office, I'm going to put in view of the camera. The character is more important than the actor that plays them, because it's so true. we may get attached to certain actors, but at the end of the day, the character and serving that character is more important. So whichever way James and whoever the director they choose to direct Supergirl intend to go with the casting, we will be open and give it a fair chance. Whoever wears the Girl of Steel's cape, or Woman of Steel, I guess, depending on the movie, how the movie plays out. Whoever wears the cape. And once we have that information, you can bet we'll be back here discussing it and sharing our thoughts on it. Now, moving on to Supergirl's cousin. We had 2 bits of information from Legacy. Well, 3, technically. The first was last week, literally, I think, a day or 2 after the strike ended, the actor strike. James Gunn released a thank you to his crew that worked on the pre-production, the concept art, etc., those things, and said thanks to the hard work of this crew. Despite the longest strikes in Hollywood history, we're going to be able to forge forward with Superman Legacy meeting its July 11th, 2025 date. And to commemorate this, he released an image with the date of the film and exclusively in theaters. And it was the traditional comic book font from the Superman comics that has been used since 1938, 1940, what have you. I thought it was really cool. It warmed my heart to see that font on an official piece of Superman movie product. I know it did you as well. I don't want to speak for you, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. And never in my wildest dreams, Zeddy, did I think that comic book lettering would start chaos online. I thought better of the internet, but stupid me, I should have known better, because apparently comic book font is a no-no for a comic book movie. Make it make sense, Eddie. Make it make sense.
Like when you put it that way.
I don't know. Really? I'm at a loss for words. I thought that looks great. I think it's James Gunn embracing the roots of the character, which I think we've said in various permutations, you don't need to change Superman to make him work. And I think, to me anyway, James Gunn choosing that font is an acknowledgement of the respect he has for the history of Superman as he is. And that brings me great joy. What did you think of the font? And would you want it to be used across the rest of the promotional material for the film?
To answer that question, absolutely, like 100%. Yeah, no, this font brought a huge, massive grin, smile, what have you, to my face, just like it did for you. Just because it feels like it's everything that I love about Superman. Just to see something as simple as like the comic book lettering font, being used to, as the stamp on the date, so to speak, right? I mean, like, it has like that John Burns, Ruby Spears type of feel to it. Even like the George Reeves kind of Superman era too, kind of use something like that too. So it just screams Superman. I think is what it is. It's simple. It gets the job done. You know it's Superman when you see something like that. And I think that's what James Gunn is trying to focus on. He's trying to go back to basics. He's not trying to overthink anything. He knows what markets Superman and what doesn't. I think that markets Superman wholeheartedly, and I love it.
Like if some average Joe moviegoer sees that exact image, July 11, 2025, exclusively in theaters. If he sees that, behind glass as a poster, Superman doesn't even appear anywhere on the font. But I bet you everybody that walks by it will know what that's alluding to.
And it's red and yellow too, so
so it's like, duh,
might be an indicator.
Every moron on planet Earth will know what the hell movie he's talking with, that image is referring to. So it's just smart.
Yeah.
use the iconography of the character. Like, are people going to get upset if the Brave and the Bold uses one of the comic book bat insignias?
I'm
They'd
sure
be
they might.
pretty stupid if they do. But here we are. This is
Yeah.
2023 internet comic book movie culture. But I digress. That wasn't the only news regarding Superman. Superman Legacy now has a villain, or since James Gunn isn't entirely fond of that word for this character, has a antagonist. Not the now, let me preface, not the only one, because I know some people are freaking out. Not the only one. Meaning there's going to be another one or more than one. So here's the news. Superman Legacy has cast Venezuelan actress Maria Gabriela Di Faria for the role of Angela Spica, aka the Engineer. The Engineer is one of the members of the Authority, which is also, as we alluded to, getting its own film. When you look at just the actress and you look at an image of the character from a visual standpoint, I don't know how you could get any better with that casting. Again, I saw her act in. She was in a Netflix. It was a comic book adaptation. I can't remember what it was called now. Damn it, I can't remember. Not the Umbrella Academy. Before that, Dead something or other it was called. But anyway, it escapes me now. But I saw her in something, and she played like a badass kind of character, and she did well in that. So yeah, I can't speak to too much about her acting, but at least from a visual perspective, I think that's like it's picture perfect is the best way to put it. Casting, but we kind of assumed that there was going to be some Authority tie-ins to within Superman Legacy, and now we've got our first taste of that. That doesn't mean that the entire Deadly Class. Thank you, Zeddy, for the reminder. Is the show? That's right. That's correct. Yeah, that's where I saw her in. But it doesn't mean every member of the Authority is going to be in this movie, but starting to sow the seeds, I think is pretty cool. It adds to the idea that this is a DC universe that exists, that has existed. It's lived in, and it's being, no pun intended, engineered like this from the get-go, not after another movie's a massive success and the studio saying, we need more of that. I prefer it this way as opposed to, hey, give us that, even if you weren't intending to give us that. So I like her inclusion. Zeddy, what do you think about this casting?
Yeah, I like the casting. It also seems like she's really excited too. Like I think she posted like a beautiful post that I think it was like Instagram or Twitter or something. Just
Instagram,
yeah, she's wearing like a Superman cape, like she was sending her parents all kinds of Superman stuff, and yada yada.
That's beautiful.
That's
you love it,
that you love to see. That shows enthusiasm and excitement, and that James Gunn ultimately knows what he's doing when he's casting, which he's proved time and time again that he obviously like has that padded down.
Like when I see that, sorry to interrupt, Zeddy, when I see that kind of stuff, look, I'm sure all these actors that are signing on to this movie enjoy the paycheck that comes with it. Like, let's not kid ourselves. These people don't do this job for free. However, when you see stuff like that, it tells you this person's doing it for more than a paycheck. Like, they're invested, and they're not just going to phone it in. You know what I mean? So I like that.
Good. Yeah, no. No, yeah, of course. And I think you and I were kind of talking a little off air too, because obviously, like, James Gunn is planting the seeds for the Authority
Yeah.
in this movie, whether it's intentional or not. Like, I mean, you have a movie titled The Authority coming on your slate too, right? Like, why wouldn't you
Yeah.
whether introduce or show these characters in a big grand way in a big tentpole movie such as Superman Legacy? I just think that it's a genius way instead of waiting till their movie or waiting close to their movie, instead of, establish them now, set the groundwork for these characters so that, they're at least familiar and entrenched in a general audience moviegoer's
Yeah.
mind. It just seems like it's a no-brainer. And I've had a lot of discussions with people, just in general on what this Superman movie actually is. And while I understand the frustration of that, we're getting a lot of non-Superman esque characters being announced right now. While it may seem that way,
Yeah.
I appreciate everything that I'm seeing and hearing because this already feels way more ambitious and it feels way more of a Superman comic book movie than anything that we've seen before. And I understand that it may not feel like, well, this isn't a Superman movie anymore. I mean, look, the movie's titled Superman Legacy. And if you don't think that Superman and Lois are going to be at the forefront of this movie,
Yeah.
then maybe this movie isn't for you. And I don't say that in a mean, narcissistic way, but I mean, this is going to be a totally different Superman movie than we've seen before.
And I've heard those same,
Yeah.
chatters online about, oh, this is not a Superman. Why they even call it Superman?
Your Jimmy Olsen is coming. Yeah. Relax.
Well, Jimmy Olsen, I got news for you. Jimmy Olsen's coming. He's probably not going to be shot in the head for a cool factor. That's just a guess on my part. I'm willing to bet Perry White's in this. In fact, I have a pretty good idea. I think he's no. James Gunn hasn't told me this, but just me speculating. I think he's been cast, and I think he's going to be played by one of the members of the of Guardians of the Galaxy 2. So, and it's a character that was blue and had a flute. If you know which actor that is, that's who I think it's going to be. But take it or leave it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If I'm not, I look like Nostradamus again. But so these characters are coming. Let's relax. And again, remember back in 2013 when we had a standalone Superman movie? A lot of these same people were saying, "Well, when are we going to get to Justice League?" David Goyer was being asked during the, and Zack Snyder were being asked during the Comic Cons, "What about Batman? What about Wonder Woman? What about a shared universe?" So you were all asking for it then. Okay, now they're giving it to us, and they're giving it to us properly.
Yeah.
And we're complaining now. So like, what? My question is, what do you want? And here's the other thing. Like, again, James Gunn has said that he doesn't throw characters into a movie just for the sake of setting up the next movie. If the characters are in there, then they have a very specific purpose to help tell the story and advance the story of the main characters, which he has reiterated several times are Clark Kent / Superman and Lois Lane. So I'm going to trust the guy who made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if you count the Christmas special, 6 if you count Peacemaker, 6 ensemble superhero properties, and did all of them well to varying degrees, but I liked them all. I'm going to trust that guy. Joe Blow on the internet can scream into the void, and I don't care, but I'm going to trust the guy that has done this 6 times and done it well 6 times. I don't know. Just my way of being. But relax. Jimmy's coming to the film. What he does in his own time is his own problem. And so is Perry White. And that's all I got to say about that. So let's relax. Let's enjoy the casting we're getting. Because, listen, up until a couple of years ago, who knew if we were even getting a Superman movie?
Yep.
And if you want to know the dire straits that we were in way back when, why don't you go watch the behind the scenes of the canceled Superman productions?
Yeah.
Where they had announced every character under the sun, and then the Superman related character, and then the movies didn't happen. So I'll take a couple of other DC characters plus the Superman ones if it means I get a Superman movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's just when you've been covering this stuff and following it for this long, and
Yeah.
you've gone through nothing but stop, start, stop, start, stop. Here's a movie, didn't do well. Here's 10 years waiting. Here's another movie, didn't do well. Here's another 10 years waiting. When you've been through all that, yeah, I'll take a couple of extra DC characters in the Superman movie. No problem.
Yeah, it does feel like a gift. Absolutely,
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
So relax. The Superman characters are coming. They'll probably, who knows? They'll probably be announced as we're recording this show.
Yeah, right.
Just because that's what my buddy James.
And here's part 2 of this episode.
Yeah. So look, it's visually the casting is on point. The actress seems to be over the moon about being involved in this project, and James Gunn, as of last night, posted an image of his production office, and I want to rent it out to sleep there because it's got pictures of Superman, comic books everywhere, and that's my kind of place, folks. So I can't wait to hear more about what's coming from Superman Legacy, and I love the fact that we keep barreling forward towards the start of filming, which should be around March of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
So things are ramping up again, and I think for myself, this Superman fan is happy, and I'm pretty sure you're in the same boat, Zeddy.
Oh yeah, I literally, dude. This feels. I haven't been this jazzed for a DC movie since maybe the Batman, and I know like the Batman like feels very recent too, but I don't know. Everything that I hear and I see about this movie, it just feels like it's gonna be special. Yeah. And I feel like when we see that costume test review that you and I keep talking about,
yeah.
I think it's gonna be a day for the ages. I really
which James Gunn has confirmed will be once they've started filming, not before. So
yeah,
that doesn't mean you have to wait till the end of filming, but let them start filming first, and then believe me, the minute they have to take it outside the night before, they'll take a
the minute you think it's gonna get leaked,
they'll take a picture.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for all that, because you can bet if all we have to go on is a picture. When that picture is released, there'll be a 2-hour podcast that follows it. I guarantee you. As we just call it right now. If James Gunn would tell me the date, we could just plan the podcast now. It'd be a lot easier, but he won't.
Even if all we see is Rachel Brosnahan in a purple blazer jacket, 2-hour podcast.
Don't get me started. That's what I want to see. I want to see 2 pictures. I want one of Clark and Lois in the Daily Planet office, and one of Superman standing on the Daily Planet building with the Daily Planet globe, in view. So, sure. James, if you're on the off chance you're listening to the show, you want to throw those 2 pictures together.
Or do one of Superman's cape hanging over Lois?
Sure.
Like it's draped around Lois. Like
yeah.
When Kane and Hatcher did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. Hatcher did one, and it was the most downloaded image on the internet back in the day. So it is what it is. If you remember that, that got a lot of. Well, I didn't have the pen back then, but if I did, it would have got a lot of these. All right, that's all the news we got in terms of on the movie side. Let's get to our first episode covering. Let's get to our covering of Superman the Animated Series. The first episode, which was Last Son of Krypton, Part 1. So, Zeddy, as you always do, give us a little bit of a brief rundown of what's going on in this episode.
Yeah, so oddly enough, the thing that we always have to point out, too, is, Batman the Animated Series did not have an origin for Batman, but Superman did. So this one is the kickoff of the origin story of Kal-El, Superman, and how he got sent to Earth, and how the destruction of Krypton was a slow burn, and how this episode really follows Jor-El, and obviously his wife Laura, in what we're letting to believe is the slow burn, destruction of planet Krypton, and how we get our little AI computer version of Brainiac, who, that computer SOB, he was always doing it from the beginning. Kind of just was orchestrating the destruction of Krypton all along, and at the end we obviously we get our origin set in stone. So this one follows Jor-El through Krypton. It was a really unique episode. Obviously, like Jor-El looks like Clark Kent. We can throw that two and two together. Laura kind of looks like Lois Lane. That's fine because you can't have an episode without Superman technically in it. So yeah, no, really, really fascinating, especially for a first episode that had no Superman in it whatsoever. Just really, really showcased everything.
Yeah, I mean, if I was like, this came out in 1997, so I was already in high school. But I can imagine if I was a kid, I'd be like, all right, but where's Superman?
Yeah.
But high school me, and also now, a 40-year-old me appreciates the more intense look at the world of Krypton and the lives of Jor-El, Lara, and the Kryptonians. I think I like that. I like that we see Jor-El discovering or studying, I should say, different areas of Krypton. So we see that scientist, doing his work, as opposed to just being told, hey, he's a scientist and he discovered this thing. Like, we actually see him doing it, which I appreciate. And, it's funny how the northern area of Krypton is visually and, similar to what the Fortress of Solitude ultimately looks like, so. But then when Jor-El heads for home, Krypton looks very different, more vibrant, more colorful. So I like that I like the deep dive of seeing Jor-El do his work, and then also of seeing a couple different areas of Krypton to show that it's not just one uniform. Like, it's not all snow and crystals or ice and crystals, which I'm not knocking that. That's cool, but that there's more to it. Like, there's other aspects of Krypton, I like that, and that was ultimately outside of the comics, which obviously over the decades had different variations on Krypton. But really, in other media, this was really the first sort of peek at that, if you will, right?
Yeah.
So I like that, and also to see the stress that those findings put on Jor-El, like, the fact that nobody on the Science Council believed him, and Brainiac was sort of, double crossing him to kind of discredit him. And the pressure that put on Jor-El, like the internal struggle that he was having, and then there's a really great moment where baby Kal-El, walks up to his father, and is making baby sounds, and which I'm not going to imitate on the show because it'd be ridiculous.
Well, baby Kal-El's adorable though.
Yeah,
adorable.
And he was adorable. But then when Jor-El picks him up and says, "Tell me what must it feel?" I kind of almost saying to his son that he envies what it must feel like to have no fear, no care in the world, right? So, and you do see the stress that it puts on both parents, because usually Jor-El is very, and he still is to a degree, he's usually very stoic, and you don't see that kind of worry really in him. Like, Lara is usually the one that is, or visually at least, more broken up about it, and she still is. And by no means is Jor-El breaking out into tears, but in this iteration, you can sense that he's struggling and he's concerned, and it's taking a toll on him. So I like that. And Brainiac double crossing. I like the idea that this is a little different, because in this adaptation, Brainiac is Kryptonian tech that sort of turns on Jor-El and the Kryptonian people, and ultimately assists in their demise. Like, he allows, by doctoring the findings, he prevents them from being able to be saved. So it's a different twist on Brainiac, because I don't think he's from Kolu at all in this iteration. He's very much a Kryptonian tech, so it's different, but it still works. And it's creepier in the context of having seen several Terminator movies where the machines rise up and cause chaos.
Yeah.
But also in real life, being a society that's so dependent on technology. I mean, it's like, you know, it's kind of like a warning of, hey, you know, maybe we shouldn't, you know, be so so bound to these devices and this tech. So it was very eye opening in that sense. I really like, and very topical even all these years later. I liked, in terms of the animation, the way they did the destruction of Krypton.
Mm-hmm.
The camera movement, the shaking, the distortion. Like, it made you as a viewer, I don't know if you agree with this, but it made you as a viewer feel like you were in the midst of the chaos with the camera work. What did you think of that?
Yeah, no, it was terrifying. Again, like, you know, like we said, like, even for an animated, you know, series, an animated episode, you know, we always give credit to Batman animated series for doing stuff like that too, where kind of it puts you at the forefront of what's going on. You know, something
Yes.
as simple as that, you know, in an animated episode, yeah, kind of really is terrifying. And I think it was also smart, kind of looking back on it now, to spend 20 so minutes or whatever
Yeah.
on this home planet, so that you get to feel the importance of it, which is what we haven't always
Yeah.
gotten, you know, in Superman lore, right? So you got this idea that, you know, Jor-El wants to fight for Krypton, but he knows it's doomed, and he decided he wants to save everybody else, you know, along with Cal. Like he said numerous times, like, you know, we can take us to the Phantom Zone, and then we can send ourselves somewhere else, you know, down the line. But, you know, we got to get everybody out of here, right? And then you said it yourself, you know, when the council didn't believe him, you know, Brainiac was manipulating them.
Yeah.
And then here we are, and it makes the destruction feel that much more important. So,
And,
yeah.
and you know what was cool that I noticed as well? If you look at the outfits that the Kryptonians are wearing, it's the designs are kind of a hybrid of the early, you know, Superman comic books, like the
Mm-hmm.
late 30s, early 40s. The color, some of them were more colorful, but also it was that mixed with the John Byrne uh, mid 80s reboot design. It was like a fusion of the two,
Mm-hmm.
and I liked it because it's, again, it embraces the history of the character, but also that fusion worked
Mm-hmm.
from a design standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I,
Yeah,
I
no,
liked I
yeah,
liked it a lot.
yeah.
Um, but is there anything we missed from the episode that you want to call out?
I mean, like, it was cool to see Joel in some action sequences. Like, obviously,
Yeah,
like, you had to have some action, so it was cool to see, like
yeah,
Joel was, you know, kind of had a little bit of a physical, demeanor to him, at least when he needed to.
yeah,
I love seeing the rocket ship, the way that kind of
yeah.
like flew out at the end. That was
And
really cool.
the wormhole that opens
Yeah,
up, that
the
was cool
wormhole thing
detail.
was
Yeah,
cool too. And then yeah, and I dig that they kind of let the breadcrumbs for Brainiac's ultimately like first appearance in the show too, where, you know, he felt like, you know, he said it himself, you know, I can be all that's good and not good about Krypton.
yeah, yeah,
You know, so he was kind of like almost orchestrating, like, you know, foreshadowing
yeah, yeah.
that he was going to be Krypton's demise, and that Superman was going to one day have to face him,
Mhm.
which was terrifying in and of itself. Which is kind of like you said, Terminator. So
Yeah,
had like a
yeah,
T-1000 kind of feel to it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, so a really strong start, and
Yeah.
you know, it was for an episode that didn't have Superman.
Hmm.
I was still as enthralled and captivated by it as the first time I watched it way back in '97. So it does the job, and um, I want to say this is the most we've spent on Krypton before Man of Steel came around.
I think so.
Like, I think Man of Steel and this episode are tied for like the amount of time we spend on Krypton. I could be wrong, but it seems
No, I
like
think it is. Yeah.
they're pretty much in the same. And Man of Steel had some of the best Krypton stuff that we've seen ever.
Yeah.
So,
Probably the
so
best. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so that was very cool. But all right. So if you had to grade this episode, give it a letter grade,
Mhm.
Zeddy, what would you give it?
Yeah, I would give this a strong B plus.
Yeah.
You know, it lays the groundwork. You know, it establishes, you know, the show moving forward was what it was supposed to do. And it kind of leaves you wanting more. So I would say it's a solid B plus. How about you?
Yeah, it's a B plus for me as well. It's again, it's a deeper dive into Krypton and what that's like, or what that was like. It lays the groundwork for, like, if you were, again, one of the cool things about these, whatever animated show we're talking about, it's probably somebody's first exposure to these characters.
Mm-hmm.
So in the respect of looking at it on that front, it does a good job if you've never read a Superman comic before, and all you know of him is he flies, shoots heat out of his eyes, wears a cape and a red and blue color scheme. If that's all you know, going in as a kid or even as an adult, if that's all you know as an adult, God help you. But either way, it does the job of giving you exactly what you need to get in on the ground floor with this character. But it's set up, but again, and sometimes that could drive. This pilot was done in 3 parts. We're breaking it up because for the purpose of the podcast, but it does enough, and even though it's setting up, it makes you want to watch the next episode to see what happens next, and that's the mark of a good first outing. Is that if it does all the setup, and by the end of it leaves you wanting to come back next week and watch again, in the traditional TV model, then it's done its job. So it's a solid B plus for me, and I love the opening theme is fantastic.
Oh God, it's one of those, like, if you skip the opening theme, I'm sorry. Like, come on.
Yeah, if you're watching this on a streamer and it says skip and you skip, just imagine me slapping you. Like, I'm not there physically to do it, but I would if I was. That's just.
Oh man, I mean, like, imagine playing this and then Batman and then the Batman animated series theme back
to
back.
There's nothing after that. There's nothing really. You don't have to listen to the wall. Like, the only thing you have to listen to after you listen to those 2 themes is the X-Men '94 animated series theme, and once you've listened to those 3, you're done. Don't bother listening to anything else because nothing will sound that good. Done. Yeah, that's it. Yep. So, and speaking of done, we're done with the first portion of the show. So we're going to take a break, and then on the other side of the break, we're going to talk Superman for all seasons. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
What's up, everyone? It's the Emerald Enthusiast. For all of your multiverse viewing and listening needs, check out our shows, which include Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, Power Rangers, the Marvel Universe, and the DC Universe, including the Emerald Echo podcast. You can check us out on Podbean, and remember to subscribe right here on YouTube. That's the Multiverse Musings Podcast Network. From the first podcast to the last.
And we're back, and as promised, we are going to, for our first time on a Superman-related show together, we're going to discuss our first, do our first comic book review. And as I said in the first half of the show, we're going to start with Superman for All Seasons because Zeddy and I are on a bit of a kick with, exactly, that's it. We're on a bit of a kick with Loeb and Sale recently, so we thought we'd continue that trend, but also because James Gunn has said that this book influences, in some degree, Superman Legacy. So there's a degree that I know that I wanted to influence it, specifically with both of the Kents being alive, but that's just my thought process. But we'll see when Gunn decides to announce, if he announces that casting. But yeah, so Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale is the creative team, writer and artist. Give us a brief rundown, Eddie, of what this book's about.
Yeah, so Superman for All Seasons is essentially like a walkthrough character introduction of not only Superman and who he is and who he represents, but of Clark Kent as well, and kind of more or less his upbringing, his relationship with, his family, with Martha and Jonathan, with Lana, with Pete Ross, he's a big part in the book as well. So all your central main characters is more or less, it's like a small villain comic book form. Yeah. Essentially what it is, it shows you Superman as an early start of his career, I can't say that is one of those like a whole lot happens, but what it is essentially it's everything that's right about Superman, and it's kind of just a book that makes you feel good. And we'll kind of talk about that as we go on. But yeah, this is more or less just the introduction of Superman and kind of like how he's grown throughout, the seasons for lack of, and how Clark Kent has kind of changed along with Superman throughout the season, so to speak.
Yeah. What I would say about the book is that, to echo your sentiments, it's more of a deep character study than it is summer blockbuster movie.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, like he's not like fighting Brainiac or anybody like that.
There's no Parasite. There's
no Parasite.
Bizarro doesn't show up. It's very much, he has confrontations with Lex.
Yeah.
And there's some action that we'll discuss. But the action is Superman saving people from, more often than not, the elements.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a missile, a rocket or a missile. There's a rocket and a sub-missile that he so there is some action, but it's more a look into what makes Clark Kent tick than it is Michael Bay explosions and things of that nature. But one of the things I really do like is the fact that it's told through the 4 seasons, like spring, fall, spring, summer, and winter.
Yep.
And not only is it told through the 4 seasons, but each chapter is told through a different person in Superman's life.
Mm-hmm.
The first chapter is told by Jonathan Kent. The second chapter is told through the eyes of Lois Lane. The third chapter is told through the narrative of Lex Luthor. And the fourth chapter is told by Lana Lang. So I like that aspect of the storytelling because you get 4 different perspectives on Clark Kent / Superman than you would have if it's just a straight up narrative as we're used to, right? So I like that. One of the things that stood out to me was the sort of, first of all, the fact that Jonathan, after all these years, his son is on the verge of finishing high school, but he's kind of still shocked at, like, look at the life Martha and I have led. So, you think it's crazy for somebody to send their baby in a rocket ship to another planet. It's even crazier for 2 people to decide to take that kid in and keep them as their own, their own, right? And so he talks about that. And you see him, like, there's a scene where he's farming and there's like a rock or a boulder, like a big heavy, and Jonathan's trying to dig and Clark's like, you need some help with that? And he just lifts it. And like, Jonathan doesn't even have to say anything, but through the art, the look that he gives Clark is like almost trying to warn him, like, don't do that, don't do that in public, you know what I mean? Like, and it never had to be said. And so there's always the concern of like, or maybe it was a case of Jonathan like first seeing that level of strength from his son and being shocked by it, right? So even after all these years, he's still, you get 2 things from Jonathan here. You get the love that he has for his son and the paternal instinct that he has, but also the amazement and the still the wonder of, oh my God, I can't believe he can do that. Like, or that, he's the shock and awe of it all. And there's even a point where he confesses to Martha, it's like, have we done right by him? Have we Have we raised them the right way? Like they're getting ready. Like they know that the time is coming that they're gonna have to send them off.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that in the first chapter, and the like again, it's just the parental worry that they have, even though they know he's different, he's special, and
Mm-hmm.
that he's probably going to be okay, and he'll probably be able to handle himself. There's still that parental worry, and even the fact that they tell him that he's an alien, that happens off page. Like we don't see that,
Mm-hmm.
but it happens at some point early on in that chapter. And there's a cool big. There is the. I mean, we both said that the book is light on action, but there is a really cool scene in the first, in the spring chapter. No, sorry, the fall chapter, right?
The
Where he
fall
stops
chapter.
the tornado,
Yeah.
or he tries to save people from getting swept up by the tornado, and
Yes.
It's funny because when I saw that, I'm like, okay, so that's where they got the idea for the Smallville season 1 finale
Mm-hmm.
with the tornado. I'm like, that's
Yep.
where that's where it came from.
Yeah.
And then Man of Steel did something with a tornado, which we're not going to get into because they didn't understand the assignment on that one. But I digress.
No.
But I really love that scene because Clark saves a lot of people in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But his takeaway from it was, I wasn't able to save everybody. Like somebody, they lost a life in that, or multiple in that scenario, and he was so torn up about I wasn't able to save everybody. So you're already getting a sense of the burden that Clark feels of, I can save these people, but I can't. Clearly, I can't save everybody. And even from early on in this book, he's trying to wrestle with that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the other thing that struck me was the moment that it's clear that he's going to leave. There's just the way it was drawn by Tim Sale was so beautiful because you had Martha in the foreground sewing or knitting or doing whatever she was doing. And then in the background, you got the sunrise coming up, right? And you got Jonathan with his, and all you're basically seeing is shadow in that one. But you see Jonathan with his arm over Clark in one panel, and then the next panel he's hugging him. Like just the simplicity of that was so beautiful and so moving that I absolutely love it. To the point where, as much as I love Tim Sale as an artist, I think I prefer him on Superman than I did with him on Batman.
Yeah. No. Even like just to go.
So, what did you think of the spring, the fall chapter?
Yeah, I mean, like even to go to your point further is that there was even like that one panel where Jonathan and Martha are talking, and they don't think that Clark can hear them, but then like there's that next sort of panel where Clark's laying on his bed and he obviously can hear them, and it's kind of like you're in like that dichotomy of Clark's mind, and like you said, he's always thinking of like am I doing enough? Can I do enough? Like what my purpose is. So I think it's always relatable stuff like that I don't think is ever going to get old.
Yeah.
And like you said too, it's even, the best forms, in my opinion, of Superman media do have the Kents alive and are an active part of not only Clark's life, but Superman's life. You look at something like the Adventures of Lois and Clark, Superman the animated series.
Yeah.
The first 5 seasons of Smallville, those are all iterations that, showcase that, you need that human element of Superman to always be there. And the way to do that is to show that he's a man that still needs to go to his parents, and that it's okay to always go to your parents. So I think that it was important, just for that, just to always showcase that too. That's always why I've never been a fan that Clark needs either one of his parents to pass away, or we can't have both of them there, because you absolutely can't. So I think that's a ridiculous notion.
Not every character's origin has to follow the Batman mode of
Superman doesn't.
One or both parents need to die.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Let Batman and Spider-Man shoulder that burden.
Yeah.
I mean, Clark had his whole planet die. I think that's enough.
Yeah.
to get the point across, right?
Hmm. But yeah, no, I loved it, you know, and I love the twister ties, um, you know, as well because it does, you know, it showcases that he's a man that's always on action, you
Yeah,
know, and it's such a human thing to think that you know you saved enough people as it is. But I think the line that I always go back to is the character of Flash said it in the Justice League animated series where you try to save as many people as you can in one day. What is that called? A good
yeah,
day,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Meaning that, you know, in Superman's case, you may not always be able to save everybody,
yeah,
but you try to save as many people as you can.
yeah.
And that's really all it boils down to.
And then we move to the spring chapter. No, sorry, the summer.
Hmm.
Wait, what was it? No, wait, it was spring.
No, spring, because they do it in chronological
What
order.
did they do? So they did fall, spring.
Summer and then winter.
Yeah, okay. So spring was when he's in Metropolis,
Yep.
and we get Lois's perspective. And
Hmm.
so what I like about it is they set up Lois as this, believe none of what you hear, some of what you see, and everything you write. That's the three rules of journalism according to Perry White. So that's what Lois follows. And they use that to show the situation of Superman arriving. And okay, what do I do with this now? Because this goes against literally everything. Forget about not only the fact that he flies, um, how strong he is, but the fact that he has, and she even mentions it, the fact that he has all these abilities, and he's concerned with using them to help everybody else. So her stance is like she compares him to Prince Charming, because even Prince Charming wore a cape according to Lois. And then she says, "My concern is that it's not like it's not what it seems to be."
Hmm.
Like that's her. Like, how can this be true? So you see her grappling with that, and to sort of the book does a great job of showcasing, like, in the brief scenes that we see the Daily Planet, specifically, Perry, Lois, Clark, and Jimmy. Like, you really get the hustle and bustle of the newsroom, the close knit of those relationship of those four, even at this early stage. Like, you start seeing it form, but they further um, hit the wow factor of Superman by having him basically stop a rocket from hitting uh, Earth in one scene, and then in another scene, doesn't he stop a missile from a submarine?
Hmm.
Right. So like you really see when you have him doing. So we've gone from saving like the town from a tornado, and the super feats have upscaled in this chat. So it seems like each season the super feats are upscaling, right?
Hmm.
I thought that was a cool way of going about it. Um, and it just it this is where the different perspectives of the people telling the story is cool, because from Jonathan's perspective, it's a paternal, uh, loving, concerned tale, whereas from Lois's perspective, it's all awe and wonder and amazement and kind of disbelief. So it's just a different dynamic. And I
Hmm.
will say about the art in the Metropolis scenes, it looks very much like it's very reminiscent of Superman the Animated Series.
Yeah, very.
Or Superman the Animated Series must have taken its cues from this, I
Hmm.
would assume. But what were your thoughts about the this chapter?
Yeah, I love this chapter. You know, I think it's I like the interpretation of Lois too, that she is like the the Pulitzer Prize aspiring journalist that kind of challenges Clark a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
like it's not like right off the bat, like he's kind of like, you see that he is a little bit infatuated with her, but like they kind of challenge each other, and that's the kind of Lois and Clark that I like too. And then you got your Jimmy Olsen that's kind of intertwined between them, and you kind of feel like that relationship is there, which is again something else that I love, is that you have, like, Clark has friends. I mean, it's okay to give a guy friends, that he, even if they're work friends. So I kind of like that whole dynamic.
Yeah.
Going on to, obviously, Superman being in action is cool. Like you said too, like the upstage and saving people is kind of up the ante too. So yeah, no, again, I just like that it's feeling more and more like Superman as we go throughout the book, and that was arguably my favorite part too. And obviously, like, it feels like he's in a world that's lived in too. Again, Daily Planet's front and center. He's out and about trying to find ways to save people. That's his other thing too, is that he's going about as Clark Kent, to find out where he's needed. I think that's cool too.
And then
Lois is figuring it out as she goes.
Yeah. And there's even a moment, I think, where she's like, she kind of starts putting together that Clark is Superman, but she's like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like, she doubts herself, right? So it goes against, like again, those three rules that they stated off the top of the chapter are sort of, they're coming into play. We see her put those into action several times, right? Throughout the book. And then by contrast, we get the next chapter, which is Summer and Lex Luthor. And like, I don't know about you, but within the first few pages and just the dialogue, you instantly hate this man.
Yeah.
Like, he's just pissed off that Superman upstaged him in terms of being loved by the public. Like, his whole... And now that it's his mission. Like, he's using a woman that Superman saved to try and gain insight and information on how to ruin him. Like, how twisted is that? But again, it's all built on jealousy, and I was the most important thing in the city, and now I got upstaged. So that was,
like, the story is there,
and I like the way the use of, and by the colorist, and like the use of shadows. So like, there are a couple of scenes where Lex is looking out the window of LexCorp, and Superman will fly by, and so what you'll see is, like, there's dark shadows, and you'll see a tinge of his almost fully receded red hair. And then as Superman flies by, the colors, while it's not a fully formed image, the colors of the red and blue and yellow are like, they're popping and they're vibrant. And so I love the way the color is used to get that point across of, like, look at Superman and look at Lex's fall from grace here. You know what I mean? So I like how the colors were used. And then the way, in terms of that virus or that pathogen, whatever was dispersed into the air, I'm assuming that Lex orchestrated that.
To test Superman.
Yeah. And then the woman that he saved, he's outfitted her with a cure, and she's the only one that can, like, he's experimented on her, and she's the only one that can, administer this. And so Superman, like, brings her up. Like, Superman agrees to, like, goes to Lex for help, and then talks to her, and she calls herself, makes herself known. So Superman agrees to work with her to bring her up into the atmosphere and let her do what she needs to do to to get rid of this toxin, and the end result is that she dies. Like, everybody's saved, but she dies, and then basically Lex starts, as Superman is basically tending to this dying woman. Lex is basically telling him, well, maybe this is your fault.
Mm.
Like, are you even, like, he even makes Superman, like, are you even human? Do you know what, like, he's even telling Superman, what pathogens have you brought here? You may be more of a harm than good, right? So by putting that into his head, Superman starts to doubt himself and decides to go back to Smallville. But it just shows you, like, that's the kind of threat that Lex poses.
Mm-hmm.
Like, forget about the when he has access to kryptonite or one of his suits, which we see, the forebearer of the green suit in the, throughout this book, because Lex has his patrollers, his armed drones patrolling
Really
Metropolis.
original.
Yeah, but you see the suit, what would become the suit, which is cool. But apart from the suit and having kryptonite, Lex is, I think, worst weapon against Superman is the mind games that he can play with him.
Yeah, how manipulating he is. Yeah.
Like, he gets to him. Like, I don't think there's any other villain that gets to Superman in the ways that Lex does.
No way.
And this
outside of maybe Brainiac, I would say it's probably Lex Luthor.
Like, I was like you didn't have to touch him and look how much damage you did to the guy. Like, you didn't have to physically assault him once. Like, you just put an idea of inadequacy or incompetence in his head, and that's it, right? Especially, a Superman that's maybe 5 to 10 years on the job might not be affected as much by those words. But a Superman that's just starting out, like this Superman, would take those to heart and be hurt and confused by all that. So it made sense. What did you think of this chapter?
Yeah, I mean, like, the only thing, honestly, that I didn't like about the whole Lex portrayal in general is I guess they did a thing, and maybe it's left a little open-ended, is the idea that Lex and Lois might have had some kind of romantic inkling, relationship, whatever, interest, whatever you want to call it. And I'm just like, that just feels wrong to me. Like, no matter what interpretation you're going for, like, I don't know, that just rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
So that was really the only thing that I kind of didn't like, was that is kind of like an ongoing thing that's kind of always been around, which is fine. Like, I'm sure, like, Lois was doing her job, everything like that. But it's like, I don't know. To me, it just always feels weird whether it's like she's doing her job or not. So that's like the only thing that I kind of like rolled my eyes around. But no, the rest of it I thought was great, because it felt like Superman the movie as well. Like, I think Superman the movie maybe might have taken some cues too, where, like, there's no really big action threat per se, but it's Lex Luthor testing Superman and testing his limits and to see how far he's willing to go. So I kind of felt that was
I'm sure Loeb and Sale pulled from the movie, because Loeb is a big fan of the original.
Like how Lex was constantly orchestrating and manipulating things around him to his advantage. So
the main difference was this Lex was more menacing and didn't have a hard on for stupid land schemes. But I get what you're saying there for sure. And then the winter chapter was Clark back in Smallville. Seeing how much things changed, reconnecting with Lana, and it was cool to see from Lana's perspective how much him telling her the secret in the first chapter affected her. Like, the incident that he told her about that, she knew that any romantic situation between them was over.
Because she disappeared,
because of Clark's, nature of this goal that he had to help as many people as possible, right? And but how she, there's stuff that she says in the book, like when she's like, wherever I traveled, whenever word would spread about Superman, people were always amazed and wonder like what he must be like. And deep down I knew that to know Superman, all you had to do was know Clark. Which I thought is important, because clearly what Loeb and Sale have sort of gone off of, and I think this is also going off of the work that John Byrne had set up, is Clark is the real persona, like the farm boy Clark Kent is what you need to be, like those values need to be, are what you need to have to be Superman. The costume and the powers are just tools that he uses to get the job done. And that's when Lana says something like that, that really hits home. And so I really like that approach. And even that's one of the reasons why I like Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman so much, is because there's a line in there that it kind of echoes what this book is saying, where during that show, once Lois had found out that Clark and Superman was one and the same, like she was having trouble reconciling that. And so Clark had told her in the show, Clark Kent is who I am, Superman is what I can do.
Yep.
And I like that.
It's a great line. That
tact and the way to take the story. So I really liked what Lana was, the role Lana had here. And then we see, the big threat that Superman faces here is the flooding, the metropolis, flooding, another natural disaster. And as they're getting ready, they're boarding up the house, they're getting ready to go into shelter, and Jonathan's like, okay, we'll do all this, but we're going to be fine, right, Clark? Basically telling him, hey, you better go, you got to handle it, you got to do this. And like you can see, Clark is like sort of gun shy, just because I guess everything he'd been through with Lex, and stemming back to that first instance with the tornado. And, there's two things that happened there that actually kind of started getting me emotional when I was reading the damn book, or rereading the damn book, was when Lana was like, now I get it, I get why he's here. Like, because what it must feel like to take on this notion of, I'm going to save as many people as I can, and then have the burden of having all those lives, the weight of those lives on your shoulders, day in and day out. And she even compares Clark or Superman to like frontline workers, like firefighters and police officers, et cetera, et cetera. And then the other moment was Jonathan, like Clark is like off in his room, like sort of contemplating. And Jonathan's in the doorway, and he's like, he tells him a story about how, when I was a farmer the first year, I had great crops. I won a contest, this and that, and I thought I was the best, the best thing since sliced bread. And then subsequent years, I struggled and things didn't go my way. But, you make do with what you're given, and you persevere. And like that little bit of like those little bits of storytelling, they're really moving, and they basically, these are core tenets, like what we're getting here through other people are core tenets of what makes Superman, what make the character so great. And I just love the way it was all executed. And then visually, like him actually saving or stopping the flood, right? Like the lion changing the course of mighty rivers, right? You actually see him doing that. So it all just it works so beautifully, and it comes full circle because in this instance, no lives were lost, and that's thanks to Superman being there. So you even get an evolution for Clark, where the first time he tried that, unfortunately lives were lost, but the second time he got a chance to save people from a natural disaster, he was good enough that nobody lost a life. So you have some character growth there. But what did you think of the last chapter?
Yeah, no, the last chapter to me kind of just it reaffirms that, I like that it was almost like Clark was almost asking his parents for permission to kind of like go back out there and try again. And sometimes, in life, it's really like, you want your parents' approval.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's somebody that you know and love just needs to tell you that, hey, you can do this. Like, like you are not your failure. Like just because you failed one time, doesn't define who you are as a person moving forward.
Yeah.
So I like that. And it was kind of like that beautiful lesson as well. And again, another indication of why the Kents need to be alive while he's Superman, so we can get stuff like that to coincide with it. I thought it was beautiful too, kind of picking up all the little breadcrumbs too of like Superman 2, Superman Returns, right? Like stuff that you get like a flood is in there. So it's like to me again, like it's always like it's not about how big of a threat can you give Superman. It's about putting him in a threat that maybe it seems simple, but it's it's testing his limits, and that's why like I've never been like he doesn't always have to fight a Parasite or a Darkseid or a Brainiac. No, it could just be something as simple as he needs to stop a flood from destroying all of Smallville, or he needs to stop a Twister. Little things like that. Where it's kind of like that back to basics.
I think in the case of a smaller book like this, you can get away with not having him necessarily punch anything.
Yeah.
But I think the takeaway when you're doing a big movie, I think what the prerequisite should be is finding the balance between the things that aren't necessarily physical threats for Superman. Like he could stop a flood, he could stop a tornado, but they test him because he's got to stop the tornado while saving other people. He's got to stop the flood while making sure nobody drowns. So you can do those things, but in a big movie, it can't just be those things. Like in a big movie, you want to see him punch somebody. Yeah. Right? Where in a book like this, you can have it be a character piece and explore that in that way. And that's where I think sometimes, in the case of Superman Returns, it was all this and none of the other stuff, right?
Yeah, which is still one of my
that works in a book.
Yeah.
But not necessarily in a movie, right? So the key in a movie is finding the balance. And so far, I don't know that they've. I don't know. See, because even the first one, like you were saying,
I think Superman and Lois is kind
Superman the movie is like it had mostly him stopping natural disasters.
Yeah.
Superman 2 was mostly him fighting the 3 Kryptonians, so there wasn't really natural disasters.
Yeah.
It was just slugfest, right?
And Superman 3 and 4, we just
Superman 3 and 4, let's just pretend.
Yeah. I would say Superman and Lois is probably like that middle ground.
Because it juggles between both, right?
Yeah. But I also. Oh no, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So that's the challenge is for James Gunn to take the core essence of something like this and maybe apply it with another book that also has more of the action, fighting a physical threat villain. So there is a balance between both to be had. And if anybody's going to do it on the film side, I have faith that James Gunn will. So
yeah. And then I think the other thing that I wanted to highlight too, at least in this, at least throughout the book, and especially in this chapter too, was that it's. I think the portrayal of Lana Lang was actually really well done.
Yes.
Well. Obviously, the character in Smallville frustrated myself and many of us. So I think
don't get me wrong, Kristen Krug.
I love Kristen Krug.
On the list, but Jesus, after season 2.
So I
For the
think
love
it
of
was
God.
important to showcase that, it kind of like things worked out a little bit better, I would
Yeah.
say, in this one. But then it
Yeah.
was also interesting that, it was fascinating that Pete Ross in Smallville was the one that had to move away from Smallville because he found out about Clark's identity.
Yeah.
Because he was afraid that something would happen, that
Yeah.
he wouldn't be able to save Clark. Clark
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to save him. Or in this case, it was Lana. So
Yeah.
it was still somebody that was close to Clark that ultimately
Yeah.
had to leave
Yeah. So
because
you
they
can see
found out
where the
about
influences of
Superman.
the book came
Exactly.
from, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just dug that, and then in the end, it ended up being okay. So I kind
And
of
also, the other moment that we missed, but we got the scene with Superman giving the kid his hat.
my mom made it for me.
Yeah. And
Yes. See,
Superman and Lois adapted that perfectly.
it's
And
always there. It's always been there. I'm telling you. Yeah.
it's so yeah, I
I hope
is
Gunn
there
does that in the movie. That would be so cool.
oh yeah, I mean or something similar.
Yeah.
Like if he's not gonna use that line because it's been done, I hope he does um
Or maybe like his
the,
mom actually
the
makes
scene
the
from
suit.
All
Yeah.
Star. Like
Sure.
I want to see the scene from All Star where he stops a woman from taking her own life
Oh yeah.
to that speech.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that would be so powerful.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Um,
Absolutely.
so, but this book, For All Seasons, is there
Yeah.
anything else you want to mention before we?
Um, I don't know if you felt this way too, but he kind of looked like a lot like the George Reeves Superman too, which
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
which again,
Yeah, with
it was
the slick back hair.
yeah,
Yeah,
and like how he's a little bit more muscular and everything like that. I mean,
yeah,
so and which Superman the animated series kind of has that sort of influence as well.
and it
But
makes sense
yeah,
given Jeff Loeb like where and Tim Sale where they were in age range, right? It was
yeah, like like you kind of like to draw Batman a little bit more lean versus Superman's a little bit more of a, I'd say,
yeah,
hulkier kind of
yeah,
guy, which is cool. But no, again, this book to me is one of my favorite pieces of not just Superman literature, but Superman media in general, just because it gets everything about the character right that
yeah.
I love about Superman. It just makes you feel good. Like there's nothing in
It,
this book that doesn't like not want to make me smile. So I could see why it's always been an influence in not only Superman TV but movies and animation. It's just a phenomenal introduction to Superman. And if you haven't read this book,
yeah.
it's the perfect thing to do like around the holidays as well, because you can grow with the character as well. So I like that.
I would honestly, what I would recommend, like for new readers, is probably because this one doesn't give you the origin.
Hmm.
So if you want to do an origin and then and pair it with this, I would consider either like canonically it would make sense to do the '86 Man of Steel miniseries and then
Yeah,
this because
the burn one.
that's
Yeah,
the one that's in canon. But I also for a good origin, I also recommend Birthright
yeah,
and then read one of the two origins and then this, and that'll give you the complete early days
hmm
experience of Superman.
yeah. Because
If
Birthright's more closer to Man of Steel, but you kind of get the gist.
Birthright is like so where if if Smallville borrowed from For All Seasons,
Right.
Birthright borrowed from Smallville
Sure.
is what I can.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So it's like you can't really go either way you pair them. You
Hmm.
can't really go wrong. I mean, the
Yeah, that's
benefit.
true.
I think the benefit for our viewers and listeners is we're going to talk both the '86 miniseries and Birthright, so you're
Hmm.
going to get both of those flavors here. So
Yeah.
if you want to be read them both, just so you could be, in concert with what we're doing,
Hmm.
that's what I'd recommend. But that's the strategy I would take is pick one of the origin tales and then pair it with this, and you'll get the full uh, early days of Superman kind of picture, at least in comic book form. So that's would be my recommendation. But I love this story as well. I think,
Yeah.
like I said, the art is so stunning. I think, like I said, I prefer ever so slightly Tim Sale doing Superman over Batman.
Yeah.
Not that his Batman's bad, because obviously not. It's not. That's not
Yeah.
what.
It's not what we're
But
saying.
and then Jeff Loeb, he just
Yeah.
When he writes Superman, it's a masterclass, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, let's go ahead and give this a rating. Remember, we do for the story 5 and for the art 5. So what
Yeah,
would you?
for me, I'm gonna keep this one short and sweet. I'm at fives across the board. This is a phenomenal read on both facets, both in art and writing. How about you?
Couldn't agree more. I think it's a 5 across the board for story and art. Um, I'm glad that this is part of my collection, and it's one that I go to reread quite often. Whenever you want to be put in a good mood and feel hopeful, I think this is the one of the ones to pick up. Um, and just to know that this is influencing the people behind Superman's next big screen adventure, it just makes me even happier after having reread it again. Um, so yeah, it gets a perfect score from me, and it's fantastic. If for some reason you haven't read it, you won't find a better time than now.
Yeah.
I just want to give our listeners a heads up. There's a new version both in print, like an updated version.
Hmm.
I mean, nothing's changed about the story. It's just an updated version.
Yeah.
But both in soft cover, there's a deluxe edition in hardcover that's quite expensive, but the soft cover is
Hmm.
reasonable. And then if you're a digital reader, and if you don't have the DC Unlimited app, if you go on Amazon Kindle, it's on sale right now for all seasons for $3.99. That's the best $4 you ever
I was
spend.
gonna say that's still if I've ever
Like
heard
literally, if you're
one.
sitting in for a coffee, use your Krug and make a coffee and buy this book. And you won't be disappointed because that's a steal. So I would recommend that. But yeah, there it is. That's our show. It was jam packed, but coming out of a strike, we knew this was going to be a big one, and here it is. And I just did a cursory check. So far, James Gunn hasn't dropped anything new, so we're going to bring this one to a close before he does. But
Yeah.
Nick, if they want
Breaking
to keep
news.
yeah. Nick, if they want to keep talking
Yeah.
with you about Superman or any other characters, where can they track you down?
Yeah, of course. And then real quick, if I may, because I know I teased it off in the beginning. So as of this recording, it is Thanksgiving. So I do
Oh,
want to also.
yeah, that's fine. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're good. It's Thanksgiving here in the States, and
Yeah,
I know Adam, you've already had your Thanksgiving, but I did want to also say how thankful I am to you and of course producer Donnie, who works hard to get these episodes out at a reasonable time as well. That I'm thankful that I get to do this. To talk about Superman and other characters as well, and that's a real blessing for me, and especially to all our audience, our listeners and our viewers. Whether you show your appreciation to us or not, we deeply appreciate you because without you guys, we obviously wouldn't have a show that we'd be wanting to do. So I hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving. There's a lot to be thankful for, but even in times if you can't find anything to be thankful for, um, just be glad and thankful that you have life. So I would say that. So
yeah. I want to wish all our American viewers and listeners and yourself, Zeddy, a happy Thanksgiving. Because I already had mine, I would urge all our viewers and listeners to have an extra helping of mashed potatoes and apple pie on my behalf.
yes,
Um, but again, I want to thank them for watching and listening. Every one of you that does, we appreciate. And to you, Zeddy, um, it's a blessing to have you come on every month and talk about these characters that we both
yeah,
appreciate and love. And I said this off air, but I'll reiterate it here. What's really fun about this period right now is that you and I, of course, we get to go back and read some comics, and I get to maybe introduce you to some that you haven't read yet.
hmm,
But what's really fun about doing this as well is we're getting in on the ground floor of a new DC universe, and our two arguably, I think it's safe to say our two favorite characters within that universe are both getting brand new adventures within this universe. So it's going to be really fun to cover it with you from the ground up, and I'm very appreciative and thankful for that.
Yeah.
So enjoy the feast, enjoy the family, and then once you're digesting, come right back here and listen to one of our shows, because there's going to be a lot of fun to come for the rest of the remaining year. And then in 2024, when I told you there's going to be a 2-hour podcast.
Oh yeah,
about an image about a guy wearing a cape and tights, and that's the 2 hours.
And maybe some chunks.
Yeah, and maybe or maybe not. And there may be a cape on the back that sparks days of controversy. An S on the cape which sparks days of controversy online. Who knows? But I'll tell you what, we'll be covering it as soon as it happens. So stay tuned right here in the remainder of the year and into next year, because the fun's just getting started. So enjoy your holidays, and then strap your seatbelt on, because we're in for a fun ride, for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. But I'm on Twitter at Nick Zanuck and Letterboxd as well, and follow the Vigilante 1939, which is my main network show that I co-host with my two childhood best friends, Nico and Nick Caruso Jr. So yeah, go give a follow on all that stuff, and happy holidays again.
And then if you want to track me down, it's at Adam_DeesFan on Twitter, and we have a Facebook page which is listed in the description below. Click that, I will add you, and we can continue the conversation there. But until next time, remember that Superman is forever. From the first time he goes back to Smallville to get advice from his parents to the last. So long, everybody.